1, 2. Ooh, how about that? How do you know if you're a hillbilly Jedi? Darth Vader says, Luke, I am your father and your uncle. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're only clapping because you work for me. All right, make sure you sign in, please, and let's try and sit to the front of the auditorium and not in the back row. All right, I'm trying to warm the crowd up with bad dad jokes. I've written these myself. Why are rice farmers horrible photographers? Their pictures come out too grainy. Thank you. Yep. A songwriter was taken hostage during a bank robbery. He was the last person released because he was the most composed. This is a rough crowd. Thank you. Thank you very much. When computer programmers go to prison, how do they survive? They join blockchain gangs.
Test. Oh, sorry. My mic first.
Wow. We're filling up. And if you could please sit towards the front, not towards the back rows, I would appreciate it. Make sure you sign in because we're going to give away fabulous prizes at the end of the talk today. Also, we have Kathy is, as you know, a retired Border Patrol officer with 27 years. Agent, whatever. And we have information on Border Patrol, fact sheet. If you'd like one about how to become a Border Patrol agent, raise your hand, and we'll send those back to you. Okay. And if you're not interested, take them, because I'm going to throw them away, and she's not taking them back with her. Why did the witches leave Casper's Halloween party? He ran out of booze. Oh. Yeah, sign in and don't sit in the back. Yeah, someone's going to say, I don't care. What? Yeah, it's fun to call them out. You get to listen to the ideas inside my head. A wife accused her husband of being stone cold in the relationship. He said she should stop taking him for granted. No? You get it? Okay, thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you.
If she laughs, then it's funny.
No, I got a... Kathy has a joke.
Why is the crack in your butt this way instead of this way? Why is the crack in your butt this way instead of this way? So when you fall down the stairs, you don't go...
HR, I'll give you the email later if you want to file a complaint. That's one. What's that? We're good? 1, 2? What? Oh, it's time to start. It's 5 o'clock. Well, yeah, we'll get going. We got a minute. We'll let the folks.
Okay, my mic is on. I think.
Okay, so we're rolling. I'm assuming we're live broadcasting now from the studios of Sam Houston State University. My name is Michael Asplund. I'm the executive director of the Institute for Homeland Security that's here at Sam Houston State and CJ. Our focus is on critical infrastructure protection. So when you think about, when I say Homeland Security, you're going to be thinking about, I'm going to assume the FBI or other federal agencies, but our focus is on healthcare, energy, chemical, transportation, and water and wastewater, because those are 5 of the 16 critical infrastructure sectors that have been identified by the federal government as helping to keep our society rolling and moving along. So if you have an opportunity to check out the website, you can go either get to us through the CJ face page and go to the institutes, but We're very interested in working with students, so if you work for me right now, raise your hands. So we got 4 of the crew here. Always looking, right now we don't have any hires, spaces for hiring, but as students move on or do other things, there could be opportunities with us at IHS. So what I would encourage you to do is say hi to these folks. I'll have them raise your hands again so they can see who you are. There you are. And they also, let me give you a minute. You get 30 seconds to talk about the association.
28 seconds.
You're fired.
Okay, well, we at Sam Houston, we just started a new club organization. It's called Homeland Security Student Association, and it's just a spot for like-minded individuals to gather around and I guess nerd out about Homeland Security. So if you're looking to join an organization, we have a meeting tomorrow at 5 p.m. We'd love for you to come out and just say hello. There's no obligations. Just come say hi tomorrow, 5 p.m. LSC 242.
Thank you. All right, almost there. So I served in law enforcement for 26 years in California. I think that when you think about your careers, or at least as you go through your college experience, you're starting to create relationships with folks. Some you will be friends with for the rest of your lives. Some you'll just meet them in classes and you'll get to know them and learn some things from them. As it turns out, Kathy and I met at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. I was the assistant chief for City of Monterey, and Kathy at the time was a Border Patrol agent. And where were you stationed at that point?
When we started, I was in Washington, D.C. as an assistant chief.
And so together, from a federal side and from a local law enforcement side, we became friends. That friendship has, starting in 2008, so we're coming up on 20 years. I think she'll send my wife a sympathy card when we hit that 20-year friendship mark. Not only have we become professional friends, but we've hung out together. Even though we've been in different parts of the country, there's always seems to be opportunities for us to intersect with one another, collaborate on projects, share stories, trying to say, hey, I need some help here. In fact, this is a great story. So as the assistant police chief for the city of Monterey, we had this guy who killed his wife. And he was a Mexican national. We had him in custody, but we hadn't found her body at that point. So we could only hold the person for so long, especially when, and we were, and the story was he was at his auto repair shop with his wife. These guys came in and did a hostile takeover, took his wife hostage, and took her. And so, of course, as we were asking questions, it wasn't making any sense. But at one point, he says, I want to leave. So we had to let him go. 2 hours later, we find her body stuffed in a car 2 blocks from where they set up the robbery. So now this guy's in the wind. We get information that he's on his way to Mexico from Monterey, California, which is a good 12-hour drive. So we anticipate that he's going to hit San Diego at the San Ysidro border crossing. And so I'm trying to figure out, well, how can I, as an assistant police chief, get on the phone to somebody at Border Patrol at the San Ysidro crossing to give the information of the license plate and the suspect that we're looking for. So at the time, Kathy was actually, I think, in McAllen. Mm-hmm. So I called her up. Kathy, it's Mike. Listen, here's what we got going. Can you, what do I do? And she says, call this number, tell him I told you to call. So I call the number, this Border Patrol agent answers. I say, I'm Mike Asplin, Assistant Police Chief, Monterey, California. Kathy Scudder gave me your number to call. So, oh yeah, sure, what can I do for you? I tell him what's happening, and without hesitating, he says, okay, we're going to close the border. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Headline.
It's kind of a big deal.
Monterey City Assistant Police Chief closes U.S.-Mexico border at San Ysidro. That would not be good, right? So then I was paused, then he laughed because he was obviously making fun of me. And he said, no problem. We've got license plate readers. We'll plug it in and we'll see what we can do about that. So we didn't catch him at the time. It took about 5 years, but we did get him, and he's currently serving life. But this is just a great example of a relationship that started in 2008 that carried over for decades now, almost 2 decades. So I just want to introduce to you Kathy. I'm going to let her tell her story. This works best if you ask questions. So what we agreed to is she's going to give you 10 minutes, 15 minutes on her story, how she felt called to be a Border Patrol agent. And then at that point, she's going to talk about what is it to be in federal service, what happens when, right now you all are experiencing a change of presidential administrations and all of the shifts and policies that are going on. How does that affect federal workers? How does it affect the job that she's doing? Because you've been through at least 6 administrations, I'm guessing,
I
somewhere
came
there?
in under Clinton, so however many.
Yep, so just a few. So with that, let's give a big, warm welcome to Kathy Scudder.
Thank you. Thank you. So as Mike said, I don't know what all he said. He said a lot. He took 10 minutes of my time. Kidding. So I was a Border Patrol agent for 27 years. I started out in 1996, directly out of college. I got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I knew I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to be in law enforcement. You may or may not recognize the show name, Cagney and Lacey. If you don't, Google it later when you get home. But it was a cop show, and it was 2 female detectives, and that was kind of my model of what I wanted to do. And my best friend, we were going to be Cagney and Lacey. I went on to college and got a criminal justice degree. She got a 2-year degree, but ended up not going into criminal justice. Nevertheless, let's start April of 1996. I'm about to graduate in a month, and I need a job. I grew up kind of rough and poor, and I was determined that I was going to get out on my own and be self-sufficient and independent. So my college, the criminal justice program, I went to the State University of New York College at Brockport. So I'm used to this weather, even though I hate it, and I apologize for bringing it here. But they were holding a job fair, and I recommend that you go to the job fairs and you talk to the recruiters and you figure out exactly what people are. Do they not have job fairs here? Why are you shaking your head? This is how it's going to... Okay. Don't talk to the recruiters? Talk to the recruiters if they're wearing a Border Patrol uniform. So this is what happened. I walk in, and I think I want to be an FBI agent. I want to be a DEA. I really wanted to be DEA because I wanted to fight drugs, right? I wanted to get into federal government, and I wanted to, be what you see on TV. I had no idea what the Border Patrol was. I didn't even know the Border Patrol existed. So I go through and I'm talking to all the recruiters. I talk to the FBI recruiter. They're not hiring at the time. And if they are hiring, their requirement is you have to have a full-time job for 3 years, and they want people with, at that time, accounting degrees. I don't even know what they're hiring for right now. But it's usually not a criminal justice degree. That doesn't mean you can't get into the FBI with a criminal justice degree. It just means that it makes it a little bit more challenging. DEA, I think they were under a hiring freeze at the time, and he told me, point blank, criminal justice degree is a worthless degree. You should have gotten a degree in business. And I'm like, well, I'm a month from graduation, and I'm not going back now. So I'm looking around, and I'm talking to different agencies, and I see this green uniform over in the corner. And I'm like, that's interesting. What is that? Are they park rangers? Like, what is that? So I walk over, and interestingly enough, in the mid-'90s, it was not normal to have a lot of females in law enforcement, particularly federal law enforcement. And it was a female recruiter. So I started talking to her, and they said 3 things that really stuck with me. They said federal, they said outside, and they said Arizona. And I said, where do I sign up? So they did at the time what was called expedited hiring. And I signed up, and I took a train 8 hours from Rochester, New York to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I took the test on Saturday morning. If you passed the test, you went and did the interview. If you passed the interview, you went and got a physical across town, and then your process started from there. They did not do polygraph exams back then, which they do now. You have to go through a polygraph for Border Patrol. And I think CBPOs, I'll talk about those a little bit too. It's another arm of Customs and Border Protection. It's law enforcement, but they're at the ports of entry. Border Patrol agents are in between the ports of entry. So I go through all that process. I had gotten a few speeding tickets when I was in college, and my license was suspended. So I called the number on, it had been a couple months, and just straight up, getting hired on as a federal employee at all takes a good amount of time. They're doing a background investigation. It could take up to 9 months to a year sometimes for people to get on, particularly in a law enforcement position. So be prepared for that when you're putting in for jobs. particularly in the federal government, that background investigation is going to take some time. So I knew they were doing the background investigation because all my friends had been contacted, and they all thought that was really cool from small town USA, you know, some investigators coming, talking to them about me. And I was a pretty straight-laced kid. Never did drugs, never, you know, I sped, I got a couple tickets, my license got suspended. But other than that, I stayed out of trouble. So I knew that the background probably wouldn't be a big deal, but I wasn't hearing from them. So I called the number, and they said, well, did you get your driver's license back? I said, I got it back like yesterday. So pushed me through the process, and I find out I'm going to a place called Nogales, Arizona. That's how I thought it was pronounced, because I took German in high school, and I needed to learn Spanish. It's actually pronounced Nogales, and it's a small town on the southern border in Arizona, and I was excited to get to go to Arizona, but had to go learn Spanish. That's the other thing with the Border Patrol, you have to learn Spanish. They will teach it to you at the academy, and they've got a really excellent program, but you do have to learn Spanish, which is different from any other law enforcement agency in the federal government. They will pay you extra if you know Spanish, but in the Border Patrol, you have to learn Spanish. So I go to the academy, and the academy at the time was 19 weeks, and it was in Charleston, South Carolina. I've never been like the best athlete or the best academic person, but I always tried really hard. So I made it through the academy and went to Arizona and started working in the field. The training period or probationary period for Border Patrol agents was a year at the time. So you work with what they call journeyman agents or a training officer for that whole first year. So you're never alone for that whole first year. You're riding with someone who's training you. They do conduct and efficiency evaluations every 2 weeks. Do you have the little, oh, you, okay, thank you. Okay, so real quickly, passing around my trophy shot book, one thing that Border Patrol agents do a lot of is catch drugs, large amounts of drugs. You'll see Polaroid pictures, which these are not the new Polaroids, these are the old Polaroids of me with dope loads that I caught throughout the years that I was on the border. So we're talking hundreds of pounds. Now, street cops, like their career catch might be a baggie, right? Border Patrol agent, we're talking bundles of burlap sacked drugs. Now, marijuana is not the big drug. They're catching more cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, meth, you know, the hard narcotics, because in most states, well, not, I don't know if it's most, but a lot of states, marijuana is legal, so there's not as much of a draw for marijuana anymore. But criminals are criminals. They're not going to break good and start, you know, going into a bona fide business. They're still going to do what they do, and they make a lot of money smuggling drugs. So harder narcotics are what they catch. So back to Arizona, I'm learning the job. I'm having a great time. It's outside. It's chasing. It's catching drugs. It's learning the job. And one thing you're going to face if you go into a law enforcement career is at some point you are going to know somebody or know somebody who knows somebody who loses someone. And this is important because it's something you need to mentally prepare for. There's no training academy out there that prepares you for the loss of a classmate or a coworker, but it happens, and it's a reality. And you never think it's going to happen to you or someone you know until it does. So June 3rd, 1998, a classmate of mine, Alexander Kirknick, was shot and killed arresting drug smugglers. And it was one of the turning points or critical points in my career where, not that it wanted me, that it made me want to turn away from law enforcement, but it made it a lot. I wasn't a young, naive kid anymore, 22 years old, just out of college. It just got really real. The drug smugglers were eventually brought to justice and received a life sentence. The shooter received a life sentence. So, you know, just be prepared for that. So I promoted to first-line supervisor in Nogales. I met my husband. We got married. We have a daughter who just turned 24. I have 3 stepchildren who are older. So I'm kind of old, but bear with me. Then we moved up to the northern border. I spent 2 years and a couple months on the northern border and remembered why I wanted to leave the cold, because in June there's still snow on the ground. So we went to DC for our first tour. I was an assistant chief in Washington, DC. It's mostly like program management and stuff like that at a headquarters for a law enforcement organization, which means that you're not arresting people anymore. You're kind of doing office admin kind of stuff. Then we went back out to the field, down to Rio Grande Valley in Texas, McAllen. I was stationed at McAllen Station. My husband was stationed a couple of stations away, and now I can't remember the name. Mercedes is what it used to be called. So one thing about law enforcement jobs is that is going to be your community. That is probably going to be the people you date, the people you spend the majority of your time with. A lot of cops marry nurses, other cops, or someone else in the, I guess, emergency management field. It can be a very difficult relationship. It can be challenging. It can also be very rewarding. So my husband and I have been married almost 27 years. We were able to manage that relationship throughout our careers. But just know that is very possible for the majority of folks in that environment. We went to McAllen, Texas, and then it became really busy in McAllen, Texas. I was a deputy patrol agent in charge of McAllen Station. We were getting unaccompanied juveniles. It was crazy. I don't know if you probably don't remember the media during that time. It was 2012, 2014. Just complete craziness, busting at the seams, couldn't fit people in the stations. They were outside in the sally ports, scabies, just sicknesses, everything you can think of. The Secretary of Homeland Security came down for a visit at the time, Jay Johnson, and on Mother's Day, I'll never forget that. Thanks, Jay Johnson. I'll come to work on Mother's Day, that's fine. And we toured him around, and finally they saw what we were dealing with. It was just complete chaos, hundreds and hundreds of people a day. At that point, they were just giving themselves up, which prevented the Border Patrol agents from actually doing their national security job of protecting the border, primarily from drug smugglers and human smugglers and all the really bad things that can happen on the border. So they declared a humanitarian emergency. We finally got some funding. FEMA came in, all these different things. During this time, just prior to that, actually, is when I went for the Naval Postgraduate School, where I met Mike and learned kind of the breadth of what Homeland Security has to offer. You mentioned your Homeland Security Club. That's very interesting. I think that there's so much more in Homeland Security than just critical infrastructure or just the emergency management part. There's a lot you can do within Homeland Security that isn't what you would think it would be. Part of that is Border Patrol or within CBP or any part of DHS. How many of you want to get into federal law enforcement? 2 people. Okay, no, I'm kidding. How many of you want to get into the FBI? DEA? ATF? What else is there? You raised your hand, but you didn't raise your hand for one of those. Federal, okay. So, interestingly enough, those agencies probably aren't hiring right now. And you all are getting ready to graduate, some of you, right? Who's getting ready to graduate in the next 2 years? You need to really be thinking about what you want. In the next 2 years, you need to really be thinking about where you want to go after graduation and what you want to do. If you want to get into federal law enforcement, there are different organizations, obviously, you can start with. Let's say you want to be in the FBI or the DEA or ATF. You can get your foot in the door in a CBP occupation. It's a federal agent or officer position. CBP, I'll talk a little bit about CBP, which is the parent organization to Border Patrol. They have 3 different operational arms. There's Air and Marine Operations, U.S. Border Patrol, and Customs and Border Protection. U.S. Border Patrol is in between the ports of entry, and they are doing on-the-ground law enforcement, arresting multiple people every day. You are going to be hands-on law enforcement if you go into the Border Patrol. Office of Field Operations are at the ports of entry. Has anyone here traveled out of the country and come back in before? So the people in the blue uniforms, when you come back into the country, that's Customs and Border Protection. They are also federal law enforcement. Their jobs are a little bit different than Border Patrol, obviously, because they're dealing with people who are presenting themselves to them, and Border Patrol is more dealing with people who are trying to run away from them. And then there's the Air and Marine Operations, which is the, as the title states, the Air and Marine arm of DHS. So they're driving boats, they're flying helicopters and P3s and Dash 8s and all those different things, and they are federal agents just like Border Patrol agents. In fact, a lot of them are former Border Patrol agents. So what I'm saying is those are good starting points for anyone who's looking to be in federal law enforcement, and it gives you a great degree of, I guess, credibility when you go to another agency and you're looking to start with them. Well, I've already been a federal agent. I have actually put hands on and arrested people. How many people think that FBI puts hands on people more than once a month? They don't. It's like long-term investigations, right? If you want to put handcuffs on someone and put them in jail, it's a different job than what the FBI is, or DEA, or ATF. Mike, any questions? Did I miss anything? I didn't go into like my whole long career. It's kind of, meh. I don't know that you guys are interested in that. I worked my way up the career ladder from, ground agent up to senior executive in the government. That's as high as you can go as a senior executive position. I switched over to administrative staff position towards the end of my career because I had a different motivation at that time. I really didn't want to deal with the operational, constant putting out fires and crisis anymore. I wanted to do something to help our agents. I got more interested in the mental health aspect of the job and what we could do as an agency to support our agents, who some of which are suffering due to PTSD or any number of. We have a lot of veterans in the Border Patrol, so they bring that baggage with them as well. So I will say my crowning achievement, in my opinion, of my entire career was I started a canine support program internal to the agency where agents who are peer support or chaplaincy trained have a canine with them, a support canine, and they go to crisis events, or they go to, if there's a death in the family, or they just go to musters and support agents, and that is probably the favorite thing I got to do throughout my career. I was on the bike unit, mountain bike unit. We have ATVs. They have like a SWAT team, we call them BORTAC, Border Patrol Tactical Team, BOR-STAR, which is like your search, trauma, and rescue team, horses, motorbikes, scopes. I mean, anything you could possibly think of. There's just so much to do and a lot of fun to be had in that field. And now I'm going to open it up to you guys.
A couple questions. Is that she asked who was interested in going into federal law enforcement. I didn't see a lot of hands raised. So who, for those of you who are in CJ classes right now, who's CJ majors? Okay, who's victim studies? Security studies? Forensic? Okay, so a little smattering there. And then who plans on going into some job within the criminal justice profession, not just law enforcement? All right, so just so I have an idea, and Kathy gets an idea, where do you want to go? Just give me some examples. Like, what are you looking for? What organizations? If you're going into criminal justice, what are you thinking about? Help me out here. So Homeland Security and what, okay, so that's pretty broad, so what specifically are you considering? Okay, so DEA is under Homeland Security, right?
No.
No? Oh,
They're under justice.
okay.
So
Other
Homeland
examples.
Security has Homeland Security investigations. Most of them are former Border Patrol agents or OFO officers. Has CBP. Is it a law enforcement job you're interested in doing in Homeland Security? Yeah, okay. So that's going to be your
So what
HSI,
about
Border Patrol.
intel analysts? Nope. What else? Oh, okay, help me out. What else? For those, a lot of you raise your hands. You want to go into CJ. What are the professions you're looking at? Help me out.
Over here.
Fish and game. Okay, so that's a law enforcement job. What else? Okay, emergency management for a city. Yep.
I did emergency management in a different capacity, but as a Board of Patrol agent, I worked at DHS doing emergency management planning. I'm a
This is a rough
master
crowd.
exercise practitioner. So there's a lot you can do from this platform.
So I want to talk for a minute. She started by, when Kathy was talking about what the onboarding was, is that you have to take a polygraph. Who's fearful of a polygraph? If you're not raising your hand, you don't.
You've never taken one.
Yeah, you've never taken one. Well, that's probably good. But I just want to point out that when you hear the word polygraph, it's not something you have to worry about. The whole deal with going into law enforcement is disclosing the things that have happened in your past, and then the polygraph is only used to validate that what you've told is true. So you're looking for, in law enforcement, we're looking for people who are going to be ethical, make the right decision, and that's one way to validate. That's like an entry-level position. So
If I can add to that.
please.
The worst thing you can do is lie. Either lie on the paperwork ahead of time and then change your mind on the polygraph, or not disclose something on the paperwork and then disclose it on the polygraph. You're never going to get in trouble for telling the truth unless you murdered somebody. I mean, we're not going to hire you if you murdered somebody or you're smuggling drugs right now, okay? But there are certain things that will, cut you out of the picture, but lying for sure will. So it's a matter of ethical and moral soundness, that they could trust you to be alone out in the field or wherever, and that you're going to do the right thing, no matter who's looking. So that's the thing with the polygraph. Just don't lie on the paperwork, and then don't lie on the polygraph if you have to take one.
Because something to keep in mind is if you fail a background investigation for an agency, that will follow you as you try to get into other agencies. Because one of the questions will be, have you gone through a background with other agencies? And if they reach back and say, yeah, they failed on the poly, you're done. So just remember, if you lie, you die. The best thing I shouldn't say a thing. What you want to happen is you disclose everything and they say you're not
That's no big
qualified
deal.
because of this reason. You just don't want to get caught lying. The
So-
second thing I want to ask you, Kathy, is when you think about, I'll go first and I'll give you a chance to think about it. The question is, what skills or mindsets are a good foundation for going into the criminal justice profession? So where you are right now, what are we looking for? What am I looking for? And to me, it's about a dedication to hard work. So when you're hired, you do your job. When we talk about the background, the polygraph being just one thing, we also do look at your history, your work history, your college history, and we call people and we say, hey, would you recommend, because you're going to write people down that you say, hey, yeah, these are people that are going to speak well of me, so I do it. But one of the questions we ask is, can you tell me 2 other people that would know this person? And then we're going to call them. We're going to do a home visit. We're going to go see, on one of my home visits when I was doing background work, the guy had a party the night before, so there were beer cans all over the backyard of where this guy was at. So my point is that what am I looking for? I'm looking for people who are confident that the people, when I call an employer, they say, yes, we would rehire them. This is where they have their strengths. Those are things that I'm looking for. Dedication, follow through. Remember, you're potentially going into a profession where you got to show up on Mother's Day. I'm not interested as your executive to have you grumble to me about your hours or overtime or, oh my gosh, I got to work another Christmas. That's the sacrifice that we make to go into law enforcement. That's the commitment to our communities. People laugh when I say, why did you become a cop? And I, literally wanted to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
When I look back at
Yeah.
When I look back at my career, the pivotal moment for me was I was on bike patrol in a multi-level parking structure, and I found this guy loitering on the top level, and it's what I say, JDLR, just don't look right. And so I went over and started talking to the person, and as I asked questions, it didn't feel right. And so I said, look, you can't be in the parking lot. You have to be coming to and from a vehicle. I need you to leave. So the guy walked out, went down some steps. I rolled down to the bottom of my bike. I had 2 other partners with me. I told them what I had. We wanted to detain this guy and get a conversation going. As it turned out, they got to him first. Foot pursuit resulted. A gun was dropped, duct tape, and something else. And the guy had priors for assault with intent to commit rape. So I know that night there is a woman walking around today that was not sexually assaulted by that guy. And that's because I was there. And so I'll never know who that woman is, but I know that because of that, I saved somebody. And then the other story I tell is the 6-month-old baby that was left in urine-soaked clothes in a hotel. And I had a 6-month-old at the time. And I remember a woman coming up to me, and she was a recovering addict, and saying, hey, I just found Beatrice's baby. She was in urine-soaked clothes. She's over here in this room at this hotel. And at the time, I was working plainclothes. So I walked up to the guy who was standing in the doorway, and I said, I want to know where the baby is. The guy opened the door. The baby was asleep in the middle of a bed, and I said, well, now, this is the dad of a 6-month-old infant, right? So my question was, so who's going to change the diapers? To which his response was, I don't change diapers. To which I said, baby's going with me. And then as it turned out, she was ultimately adopted out and probably had a way better life than, unfortunately, had she stayed in that situation. But those are the small things that make the difference in the 26-year career. What are those things?
So in the federal government, there are a lot of questions around, can we trust you? Are you able to be corrupted? Is the safety of the security of the United States going to be good in your hands? So having that, I guess, confidence and self-knowledge about yourself to know that you're not going to always follow the crowd or do the things that everyone else is doing because it's wrong. It's a mentality of righteousness to a certain degree, but also standing up for what's right, and knowing that you can't be convinced or corrupted or paid enough to do something against your government or against your organization. You know, corrupt cops, corrupt Board of Patrol agents, corrupt whatever, they are out there. And it is an affront to any I can't think of it. It's an affront to anyone who carries the badge in a righteous manner that those people exist, but they do. So that's one of the things in the federal government background. Is there anything in your life that could be used against you, I guess, in any sort of way to corrupt you or get you to do something for a criminal organization that you normally wouldn't do? So associations are a big thing. If you have a buddy there's a picture of Mike in there if you can find it. He surprised me with that.
It's my baseball card.
From when he was at Delphi, too.
If I could jump in.
Sure.
So the other thing I want to talk about is be good at, I talk about doing your job and being good at your job. Sorry, Luke, I'm making you be dynamic with your camera. I'll wander over here. When I talk to people, so I will say, what do you want to do in law enforcement? And somebody might say, I want to be a canine handler. I want to be a SWAT officer. I want to be, she listed out 7 or 8 different specialties she had over her career. Your responsibility is to be good at the base job. If you're becoming a police officer or becoming a border agent, your job is to be a good border agent, is to be a good cop. The specialties will follow. And if you're out holding yourself accountable, working hard, and that's the other part of this, is a strong work ethic. You don't worry about other people. You don't worry about grumblers. Oh, this is coming or that's coming. I have a daughter who serves in the federal government right now. She just texted me today. She's in a probationary status. And if you're following the news, all probationary federal employees are on a cut list. So it's not for sure, but it certainly creates a lot of anxiety, and it becomes personal for me as a dad. But my words to her today were, continue to do your job, continue to do your tasks. You can't worry about what you have no control over. So you want to be present when you're doing your job. And that, it goes back to commitment to your craft. Is that I'm here to keep the community safe. I'm going to do that as a cop by arresting people, writing tickets, writing parking tickets, taking police reports, and solid investigations.
And when you're doing that, you build credibility to your own brand, I guess, for lack of a better word. If you're a good agent or a good officer, people notice that and they know it. And people from the specialty units, They might come and recruit you if they see you, busting your butt, just being a cop or being an investigator or a detective or whatever it is. Nobody starts there. You have to start at the bottom and prove yourself before you get those opportunities.
So we've got 20 minutes left. I'd like to open it up to questions for Kathy. So does anyone, did you talk about being a woman in law enforcement for a minute?
I sure can. It has its challenges. Women are different than men. It's a biological fact. It is what it is. Women have their, things that we're better at than men. Most things, no offense, guys. What is the best kind of man? A woe man. Get it? Sorry. Thank you. I'll be here for 20 more minutes.
Give that to you.
No, I have nothing
But
against.
Kathy, let's talk about your first 5 big challenges.
In being a woman, my first 5 years, I guess it was different in the 90s for one thing. There was a lot of razzing. There was not a lot of women don't belong in law enforcement. I did get a lot of, oh, honey, they let you carry a gun? Yeah, they do. And they let me go outside also by myself. But I didn't feel that from my peers. I really didn't. I kept my head down. I did the work. And I think if you do that, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You receive the same training. You go out there and you do your job. And you don't make yourself a target by being like, I'm a woman in law enforcement, or I'm the first woman to do that. I hope that there's some day where we don't have that anymore, where it's just, I'm an agent. I'm not a female agent. I'm just an agent. However, I will say, as my career progressed, there became a point where I realized that is important to some people. If you can see it, you can be it. And I think that's why it's important for people of all races, whatever, to move up in these organizations, to apply for those jobs, to be an example. Because what I didn't realize as a young agent, when I just wanted to be an agent, and I didn't want to be recognized because I was a female, was that somebody was watching me. Somebody was noticing what I was doing, and maybe even more sometimes because I was a female, and there were fewer of us, what I did kind of had a different impact. So when you have an opportunity, I guess, is what I'm saying, to be a good example, then be that good example. But earlier in my career, I just kept my head down and did my job.
Okay, time for questions. Raise your hand.
Please ask questions.
Somebody's got a question at this off. Someone's going to go first, and then everyone's going to ask. So go first. There you go.
You said the highest position you went on as a senior executive, right?
Yes.
What did you do as that then, when you reached that position?
What did I do?
Mm-hmm.
I was the senior executive I was an executive director over the Planning Analysis and Requirements Evaluation Directorate in CBP. It was outside of Border Patrol at that time, but I had an opportunity while I was in Border Patrol to do a lot of strategic planning and all that kind of stuff. I had mentioned before I was detailed to the department doing emergency management. So I had that experience going into that job. And my second senior executive position was over the Mission Support Directorate in Border Patrol. And that's when I had an opportunity to do a lot of the things internal to the agency that would have a positive impact for the employees of the agency.
Another piece of advice is always say yes. If anybody comes to you and says, hey, can you be on this task force, can you take on this project, you always say yes. Because you just don't know how that will build your resume and your experience. When I was helping one of my daughters write a resume, she had me I sent her mine, and her response when she read it was, my gosh, Dad, you've done a lot of things. And I sort of chuckled, and I said, that's because I say yes to everything. When I worked at the Naval Postgraduate School after law enforcement, there was a request for somebody to attend a counter-drug tunneling conference in San Diego where Kathy worked, and nobody wanted to go, so I put my hand up and volunteered. Well, I then went the next 3 years. Then I was in a briefing with an admiral where I was introduced as the Naval Postgraduate School's counter-tunneling expert. It's in my resume. So that's why you always say yes.
I want to go into emergency management. Can you talk about your experience in it and like how you got hired also?
Sure. So I had an opportunity to, so this is kind of how my career went. If an opportunity came up and it was interesting, I took it. There's never going to be the perfect time or the right, or may not be on your time necessarily, but when those opportunities pop up, put in for it. You might actually get it. So I had an opportunity, at the time I was serving as an adjutant, which is a job I actually hated because I'm not like, sir, can I get you coffee kind of person. I'm more like, you're an agent, I'm an agent, you make your own coffee. My husband makes mine, I don't know what to say. So I had an opportunity, I had a clearance, and that was one of the things that, when you think about federal law enforcement or federal government work, having a clearance is a big deal. So I had a pretty high clearance at the time, and that's what they needed. And I was not liking what I was doing, so I put in for this opportunity. And I went over to DHS planning, and what they did is they wrote plans for like a national response to a nuclear attack or a CBRNE attack, or we even had, the southern border, mass immigration plan or something like that. And then later on, I had an opportunity to go to the FEMA Emergency Management Master Exercise Practitioner. Now, those are the people who write and, I guess, perform the exercises, which I think law enforcement and emergency management have kind of gotten out of the practice of practicing. For a long time.
We've gone more to tabletops rather than full-scale exercises.
So this is your tabletop exercises where you have a scenario and you bring everyone to the table, literally, who would have a part in that scenario, and they talk through their response. What we were doing back in the, I guess this was a 2008, 10, it was closer to 9/11 than we are now. And we were still doing large-scale exercises where you literally practiced what you were going to do on the day of a nuclear attack, and what agencies were going to be involved in all those types of things. So everything from who's running the incident command to what that means for what a different agency, a firefighter coming, they come to incident command.
Logistics,
Finance,
legal.
There's literally like 4 pieces to each incident command, and you figure out who's going to do what, but you have to have somebody in charge or it's chaos. So that was my experience, and I really enjoyed the Master Exercise Practitioner training and being able to do that internal to the agency, writing exercises and doing the exercises, tabletops and full-scale exercises and stuff like that, because, well, I'll tell you this, planning is really important, but you have to be prepared to be agile, because a plan only survives first contact, and then everything goes to crap. But if the first time you're meeting your counterpart from another agency is during the crisis, that's a problem. Therefore, networking is huge, huge.
Other questions from that side of the room? Alberto's coming. He's going to hand you a microphone there.
What's the craziest story you have from your profession?
Okay. I was a young agent, not too far out of my probationary period, but I was riding alone. I was able to be out in the field on my own at that time. A lot of times, the drug smugglers would just throw bundles over the border fence. So along the border in Nogales, there's a street called West International. And we had cameras all along that area, and the camera operator would call out bundles over the fence at West I. I was working a position a little bit further east that day, and he called it out. It was 5 or 6, I was working midnight shift, it was probably 5 or 6 a.m. It was around daybreak is what I remember. The sun was just starting to come up. And he calls bundles over the fence, and nobody answers up on the radio. I'm like, is everyone sleeping? What is going on? 5 o'clock is like the witching hour. Everyone's like, I can't stay awake any longer. So no one responds, and I'm like, all right, 10-4. I answered up on the radio, and I headed that way. And as I'm headed down West International, a car comes out of the neighborhood, and it almost T-bones me, like right there. So I'm like, that's weird. I look over at the driver, and he looks at me, and he's like deer in the headlights. And so I get out of the truck, and I walk around, and the passenger is trying to get out of the car. I'm like, in Spanish, get in the car, sit down, don't move. I come around to the driver's side. I ask the driver to get out. The passenger is just being really weird and fidgety. And so I draw down on both of them, and the driver's like, oh my God, please don't shoot me. I ask him to come to the back of the car, and I ask him to open the trunk, and he tries to hand me the keys, and I'm like, no, you open the trunk. I want you to open the trunk. And the passenger is still trying to, he's trying to get away. Well, I don't know if he's going to come around behind me. I don't know if he's going to just dart off and run away. But my spidey senses are like, what? I don't have this all completely under control, right? So he opens the trunk, and there's bundles of marijuana in there. I think it's actually in one of the pictures. If whoever has it, there's a picture of a trunk open. That's the scenario. Where was I? He opens the trunk. There's marijuana. So I call on the radio. Code is 1046. I had 1046 West I, and the passenger is still kind of over here off in my vision. Again, I'm a brand new agent, right? I'm just on my own for the first time. So I'm just really nervous about what's going on. I get the driver on the ground behind the car, and I'm talking to the passenger, and I see one of our beautiful, lovely white Broncos bounding down the road, coming towards me. I'm like, thank Jesus, it's backup. Very rarely is there backup for Border Patrol agents. You can be an hour away from your nearest support. So it's one of the gentlemen who had been one of my journeymen at some point, Mike. His name was not this guy. He was tall, slender in shape.
Not slender.
Obviously not this guy. So he gets out of the car. I'm like, that guy's trying to run. He goes off and gets the passenger, comes around. And I don't know, I don't have a recollection necessarily of what happened after that, because I think the adrenaline dump took everything away. But it's one of those scenarios where just everything's kind of happening at the same time. Your gun is drawn, and you're trying to control one scene, and this other guy's doing another thing. And that's probably not the craziest thing, but it's definitely one of my...
But I think what's important in the story is you're talking about your what you went through, but what everybody else saw in that scene was you were in control. Because otherwise that guy would have ran.
Right.
If they thought that you were weak or you were vulnerable, they would have done
there were
something.
people that would ask me, Border Patrol agents catch large groups of people, 20, 30. The largest group I ever caught was 70-something people. I wasn't alone, but imagine managing that many people at a point, by yourself, possibly. And I would have people ask me, aren't you scared to be out here by yourself? And I'd be like, I got 30 of my best friends right here. The reality is there is such a thing as officer presence. And if people think they can get away with something, they will try. If they don't, they won't. And it's all about how you present yourself to that person or those people. Not always, but the majority of the time.
So 11 months ago, you retired.
Yes.
And as a result of your experience, you were hired by a private industry.
Correct.
And you have a cooling off period of a year before you can actually start using your connections to support this business.
Yep.
Well, that ends in 21 days.
Yeah.
So you got paid to sit around. You got paid to work really hard, and but during that time, you wrote a book.
I did.
So why don't you grab it and let people look at it? Well, you're not going to all be able to look at it, but you have to see it from and tell about that process. What's the title?
What did I sign up for? I think I write much better than I speak. I can be much more articulate when I'm writing. So it's some of the stories that I told today. It's about my career, my path, a little bit about my foundation, but the majority of it is about what I did and dealt with and how I handled things as a female, as an agent, as a human being, as a leader throughout my career. So it's all of those things. It was also a very cathartic process for me. When you go into law enforcement, you think, I'm going to make a difference, I'm going to change the world. And that landscape evolves over time. Dealing with the differences and administration changes, particularly as a federal agent, can be incredibly exhausting. Particularly in immigration over the last 10 or 15 years, it was one end of the spectrum to the other and back to the other end. It was just exhausting to deal with. And the higher you got in the organization, the more you had to deal with the nonsense of politics. But I think every law enforcement job nowadays deals with certain levels of politics, and you just have to be savvy about it. You have to find a way to decompress, have hobbies outside the job. I rescue dogs. There's also a chapter about that in here. I rescued many, many border dogs over the years, but it is a passion of mine. It gave me respite from the nonsense. It made me feel like I was doing something good, giving back. And I talk about a lot of that in here. It's just how my career evolved from wanting to make a difference to making a difference in a different way than I thought I was going to. So it's on Amazon. We will be gifting 2 of them.
We have, what I did is I numbered everybody on the sign-in list here. I numbered and I ran a random number selection. 2 of you will walk away with signed books. And the winners are, where's Braden Chong? Okay, you won one, so after we're done, come see. And Shelby Brown. Where's Shelby?
And if you don't want it, that's okay.
Oh, that side. Yeah, cool. So once we're all done, come on up and she'll sign it for you. So congratulations. Go on there and buy them because she's like the best-selling author right now for her publisher. So you can make her look good. How much are the books?
You can get it in the Kindle for like $4.99.
$4.99. What a deal, right? So with that, please give a round of applause for Kathy. Thank you for your time. What I'd like to do is before you leave, if you don't mind getting up on stage with Kathy, we want to take a picture of all of you with her. So if you don't mind doing that, jump up there. That would be very cool. And thank you for attending and being part of this.